To start with, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. The University of Tasmania, especially the Faculty of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to also acknowledge my beautiful wife in the gathering here tonight, who has come to witness this time. To match up with match what these two great speakers have done, I don't think I can. However, I'm grateful that they have paved the way for me to really crack some nuts tonight. My story is not different from many asylum seekers coming to the shores of Australia, coming to seek refuge. As a young boy growing up in the Republic of Sierra Leone in West Africa, at the age of 14, civil war came into Sierra Leone. And often when I am driving taxi, people ask me, is Africa a big country? Or are there good cars or houses in Africa? Well, I do tell people politely that Africa is not just a country. Africa is a continent with 54 countries. And some of the countries are 20 times that size of Australia population-wise. I came from a very tiny country in Africa called Sierra Leone on the west coast, with the landmark size of Tasmania with a population of 6 million. And this is Sierra Leone. I came from a very tiny area from the eastern part of Sierra Leone, which is Kailaon district. On the 23rd of March, 1991, a ravaged civil war reached my hometown, Weirdo. As a young boy at the age of 14, I had no choice but to flee into exile with my parents. What took me into exile is quite amazing. However, tonight, I am speaking in my position as a former refugee, even though I have some caps of being an ambassador for multicultural affairs in Australia, but tonight I want to talk from a realist perspective as a refugee or former refugee. The civil war in Sierra Leone was started by a gentleman called Fode Sanko. He is now dead, but this guy came with a target of amputation, killing people, just opening wombs of pregnant women, and all type of torture in the name of his bringing freedom. I think the freedom that every humanity will seek for is not a freedom of torture, neither a freedom of amputation. But that was what many Sierra Leoneans experienced, and today they are living with the scars. They captured my hometown, which is Buedo, and when that took place, parents could not look for their children, and I was that example. My mother, dad, brothers and sisters, they left me, they ran away. I have to find my way after almost a day walking before I could reach them. As I said earlier, on the 23rd of March, when I fled, I went into a neighboring country called Guinea. It took us 3 days to reach the borders of Guinea. Guinea is a neighboring country to Sierra Leone. And I spent 14 horrible years living as a refugee. I went into exile at the age of 14. I spent 14 more years just seeking safety and survival. Being a refugee is not anything fun. I cannot imagine or even expect any of us here to become refugees, because the title refugee to me is slavery. The title refugee to me is imprisonment. The title refugee to me is not of human nature, but is of evil nature, because you have no rights as a refugee. You don't determine where you are going, you don't determine when you will go, you don't determine how you will go, you don't determine when you will live. So being a refugee is quite disturbing. That's why I always like referring to myself as a former refugee from Sierra Leone, because I'm a citizen of this great country, Australia. Escaping as a refugee is quite confused, and it's really difficult for me, because as a young boy, I thought when they say refugees, these are just special people that they support. Until when I spent the first 2 years in the refugee camp, I came to realize that being a refugee is not anything good, but difficult life. So this is how refugees escape. If you are escaping as a refugee, you don't plan your trip to say, like the way economic migrants or people who go overseas to seek employment or geographical issue, changes environment. A refugee has no such plan. A refugee will move if, for example, I'm just stating this as an example, if anything is happening in Tasmania and we are here tonight, we cannot think of going back home. What we do is we just follow any crowd that we see leading away. No matter whether they are going to a safe place or not, we follow them. That is how refugee life is. These are the young guys that really brought torture, carnage, and inhuman treatment of humanity in my country, Sierra Leone. All these are young soldiers who were indoctrinated into believing that they are bringing change. They will bring change for people, but the change they brought was amputation. The change they brought was opening wombs of pregnant women. The change they brought was actually everlasting pain to the people of Sierra Leone. These are the results. A little child like this, she knows nothing about the political landscape of Sierra Leone. She knows nothing about what was happening in the All People's Congress government, which is the APC. However, the gentleman on the left here, who was the rebel leader, Oprafode Sanko, he knew what his agenda was, and he believed he was going to bring change. Unfortunately, the change he brought for Sierra Leone was this one. This is the result. And on the right here, he is now being convicted for aiding and abetting war crimes in Sierra Leone, and he's serving 50 years of imprisonment in Great Britain. He is Charles Taylor. He was the one that supported this guy to kill the people of Sierra Leone. These are the agony of war, the horrors of war. Often when I hear about asylum seekers, both people jump in the queue. I don't want to speak with a political cap tonight, but I want to tell us that the people that come to the shores of Australia are genuine refugees. If there are any economic migrant or people coming with millions just to find themselves into Australia, I want to tell us tonight that many of them, 99% of them, are true refugees who are running from things beyond their control, who are running away from torture that they can never control. If only people are so wicked to themselves, I don't think anyone will be brave enough to sit on the high seas for weeks just to reach Australia as an economic migrant. But these people, as you heard from the previous speakers, they are running away from things that they cannot control. And what makes me to be here tonight is because of the fear of being amputated. They will ask you, do you need a long sleeve or a short sleeve? They cut your hand because they don't want you to vote for the government. If you say you support the government, they ask you, do you need a long sleeve or a short sleeve? Whatever you choose, or if you don't choose, they will choose for you. What has these little kids got to do with politics? Or what has they got to do with the history of Sierra Leone? Nothing. But yet, they were victims of war. These are the horrors and the results of what happened in my country. You know, when we talk about the benefits migration brings to countries like Australia, it really gives me a moment to pause and ask myself, what is Australia up to? Are we waiting for another 20, 50 years to come up and apologize to these people we are now turning back to different countries, calling them all types of names? Are we waiting for another 50 years to come to realize the mistakes that our politicians are doing today, to apologize like they did for the Aboriginal people? This is one of the questions I would like us to ponder with tonight as I continue my speech. In Sierra Leone, even though people were amputated, yet still they had the courage to vote for government. This is one of the examples. With no arms, yesterday they voted for democracy. And I believe democracy is not democracy that brings torture to people. Democracy brings freedom of speech. Democracy brings peace and stability in a nation. And Australia is enjoying democracy. As a refugee, you have no alternative but to suffer whatever consequence comes your way. You don't have better treatment, you don't have better shelter, you don't have anything that will keep you alive. This was me in the refugee camp when I was sick. There was no treatment, nothing was there. The only treatment I had was the hope and love and care my wife was giving me at the time. She was the only doctor I had. Besides, there was nothing else. And these are little kids awaiting treatment at a medical facility, these tents. Is this the life we want our children's children to live? Is this the life the politicians of Australia would like for other human beings that are suffering around the globe would love to live? Today, as I speak to you, Australia is the chair of the Security Council of the United Nations. Today, as I speak to you, Australia is signatory to the 1951 Convention on Refugees, and they signed to that convention. Why is Australia turning back to the right and dignity of humanity and sending people to where they don't belong? Is the taxpayers' money of Australia just to be spent to actually achieve deterrent purpose, or the taxpayers' money of Australia is to be spent to advance the economic prosperity of this beautiful country we call Australia? These are the questions I would like us to ponder. Being a refugee is not all over. We have something that we strongly believed in, and that is collectivism, community engagement. Coming from our collectivist cultural perspective, when I arrived in Australia, I thought I could never fit, because living in an individualistic culture like Australia actually constrained my cultural identity, it constrained my humanity. However, as the saying goes, if you are in Rome, you have to practice living like the Roman does. So, today I'm proud to call myself Australian so far as a taxi boy. I love this place, and I believe that what I am doing today will be a pathway for tomorrow. My children will not be called by the color of their skin, but by the content of their characters. Displacement is one big thing that affects refugees. Displacement is one big thing that affects asylum seekers. Displacement is one big thing that affects the so-called boat people. Many of us, we live peacefully, we have never tasted what is suffering. Australians will never sleep without food because the land is so prosperous and everyone has something to survive on. However, refugees will go without food. Refugees will go without drinking water. Basic human rights. People go without it. Tonight, I am not only here to preach to the converted, but I want us, if we have already received the message, please, we should take this as an opportunity to really touch the minds of those yet to be convinced. That's why I really love the topic tonight, connecting to the minds of the community. If we can make that possible, each of us here can reach someone in the community, I think we can achieve a better end. As a refugee, I spent 5 different refugee camps as my destination. Sometimes when I go to a refugee camp, I ask myself, are we really here for long, or we are just here in transit? The reality is sometimes we spend 4 or 5 years in one refugee camp. Not with our choice, you have no choice. And to your information, Australians, I never choose to come to Tasmania. I was only brought here. Many asylum seekers coming to Tasmania never had the choice to come here. When I reached in Sydney, I was amused and I was so happy about the big city I have never seen in my life. I told my wife, we have reached the second heavens. Not to my knowledge, the immigration officer who was accompanying us on the journey, he told me, this is not your destination yet, you have another journey to take. Reaching at the airport of Hobart on the 10th of November 2006, the breeze that blew us, I said, oh my God, this is another refugee camp. However, I want us to believe that transition and acculturation takes a lot of effort. And for us to transition into this beautiful society we call Tasmania takes a lot of time. There were moments I used to question myself, do I need to practice 50-50? When my wife does a bit at home, I do. From an African cultural perspective, men don't cook, men don't wash dishes, men don't take care of kids. Men only look for food and bring it, and then the wife is to look after every other aspect of the domestic affairs. However, coming into Australia has really enhanced my knowledge and understanding of what they call marriage and equality in human life. So, life as a refugee can be meaningless, can be worthless, can be without hope. I was living in darkness. Every day I go to bed, I ask myself, if I can go to school, what will it be for my two beautiful kids that I had by then? There was no hope. There was no future. There was nothing to live for. The only thing we could live for is to sleep and wait and know what is going to happen the next day. Challenges and barriers that really hinder settlement into new communities or society like Australia could be one, language barrier. If I ask tonight how many people within here speak more than one language, probably there will be 20 or 40%. If I tell you I speak 4 other languages, you may not believe me, but yes, I do. Acculturation is one big thing. Coming from a different culture into another culture gives a lot of pain to people that settle in, especially when we talk about intergenerational conflict with kids. Our children that we are bringing up here are finding it difficult to settle into this society because when they go to school, they teach them the Australian way. When they go home, we are expecting them to believe that we are the parents, they should listen to us, and they should listen to our advice. So this is a conflict of interest. However, we have the responsibility as citizens of this beautiful country to shape the way forward for these children tomorrow to become better citizens of this nation. Accessing suitable employment is a difficult scenario for many former refugees or new communities in Tasmania. When you go and apply for a job, they will ask you, have you addressed the selection criteria? Have you met all the requirements? People coming from a very poor academic background will never be able to address selection criteria before they could be given jobs. This is an issue I would like to highlight for people within here tonight to please help us educate employers and services that are responsible for giving employment to refugees or former refugees, for them to realize that these people, even though they do not have the capability to address selection criteria, that they do have the skills required to enhance the economic prosperity of Australia. Lack of work experience will also hinder the progress and settlement programs for refugees, and we do have difficulties in recognizing overseas qualification, which is fair enough. However, if I was to tell myself 6 years ago that I would one day stand in this place where I am tonight to speak in front of 200 people, I could tell myself no. But today I'm fortunate enough and I'm so grateful and thankful to the beautiful Tasmanian community for giving us another chance to hope, giving us another chance to a better tomorrow, giving us another chance to build a pathway for our children to live in a society where they feel belonging. What I would expect from us tonight is to encourage our leaders for them to demonstrate good leadership for the generation to come. I would like to acknowledge the Mayor of Brighton, Mayor Tony Foster, who has played leadership without boundaries, and also the producer of Mary Meets Muhammad movie, for giving us the platform for Australians to hear about the stories of people like me. And one thing I believe in Australia, as a taxi driver, which I experience every night, is Australia is a society that embraces and welcomes people. But the only thing that is stopping that from happening is the political platform that politicians use to transmit negative perceptions and meaning to what the reality about refugees is. If we only could be given the opportunity to speak in forums like this, express our stories and share our plight of being refugees, I am very much assured that in the next 5 years, Australia will be a nation that is not skeptical about people that comes into this beautiful country. To end, I would like us to reason out, why should the government of Australia really misuse the taxpayers' money just for deterrence purposes? Sending people to Nauru, sending people to Papua New Guinea, spending millions of Australian taxpayers' money, when that money would have been used for a better purpose for Australian economic development. I want to tell you that there are living examples within Australia from former migrants like myself who have contributed positively and productively towards the economic development of this nation. In Tasmania, we have millionaires who came from migrant backgrounds. We have great examples in Australia, prominent people in Australia. Most of them came from migrant background. Australia as a multicultural country should be in to embrace and welcome people coming from different countries, because I believe 4 in 10 Australians are either born overseas or they have relatives that come from overseas. So if we are to build a society that embraces those that are suffering in the world without hope, without future, if we all are human, I believe we should all be equal. And I am always ready to sacrifice my time to really speak in forums like this to enlighten and educate our community. The only thing I believe can change the landscape of what we have now in Australia is education. If we educate the society we live in, we can live a better society. I believe in education. As I speak to you, out of driving taxi, I am sponsoring a school project in Africa on my own, just because I believe that if I educate the little kids in Sierra Leone, tomorrow they in turn will become productive citizens of that country. Please, Australians, please, Tasmania, I want us to be together, not only as people who love human beings, but as people who value whatever people brings into this country. I will never encourage anybody coming into this country to really say, I have come into Australia, but I want to change the culture, the norms, the values of Australia. That is not what Australia is. Australia is a country that embraces people who are ready to take responsibility and work according to the values of this nation. Tonight, I would like to rest my peace and thank you, Australia, thank you, Tasmania, and thank you to the University of Tasmania for giving us this platform to share our stories, and I'm open to share my story in any form. If you want to know more about me, go onto my website. You will see stories about me. You will see the whole history about my family. You will know what brought me here. You will see some graphic videos that will tell you a better story that I have told you tonight. God bless you all, and thank you.